Just trying to get this pulled up here properly. Sorry, my PowerPoint does not want to seem to come up here. Just give me 1 second. Gonna pull it up on the actual thing I created on because the PDF doesn't seem to be loading. Okay, just start sharing my screen here and then we'll get started. Can everybody see my screen right now with the presentation?
No, it shows like loading.
Yeah, it's loading.
Okay.
Same for me.
I don't know why. Okay. Sorry, the person that's doing tech support in this, you should have my PDF slides. I don't know if you're able to, if I can like share it through that instead. I don't know why it's loading.
Yes, you can also try downloading the document instead of doing it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be loading. I will try again.
And if not, I can share it for you.
Doesn't seem to want to. Okay, I think we're just gonna have to play it without it being in full screen because that seems to be a problem. Okay, can everybody see it now? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Sometimes when I have too many things on my computer, it's not loading properly when I'm on Zoom. Okay, so we'll get started. So yeah, my name's Gabriella, and today I'm going to be presenting on creating and sustaining community-led projects. I'm a co-founder of The Hatch, which I'll explain in a moment here, and this session we'll be talking about creating community-led projects from a general point of view, but we'll be using our community fridge and our community handbook as sort of a guide for how we built our fridge and our handbook, and hopefully you can integrate those strategies and things that we've learned in whatever project you're looking to create yourself. So first off, I'd like to just acknowledge that we're the Hatch and our community fridge. We're all situated on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina nations. We also recognize that the region is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta. Sorry, forgot to change that. It will actually be districts 5 and 6 within the historical Northwest Territories. Northwest Métis homeland. As racialized and uninvited guests on this land in Mohkinstsis, we're very grateful for the opportunity to work and live on this land. And we'd just like to thank a couple of our partners that helped us to create the community fridge as well as our handbook. So the Calgary Foundation and the Friends of the Federation of Calgary Communities for providing funding for the handbook, and as well as to the Ross Carrick Community Association that's really supported our fridge in many ways and allowed us to actually get the project up and running and continues to support the project now. So as I mentioned, today we'll discuss key elements of our learnings on how to build and maintain community-led initiatives, and I'll be using our fridge and our handbook as guides. So, the Hatch. We are a mutual aid group. We promote collective action and community collaboration. We believe that everyone deserves access to basic needs and services, and we create projects that build community solidarity. We address issues like food insecurity, income inequality, and other accessibility related challenges. We've helped to start Good Neighbor, which is a pay what you want store downtown. We have our fridge, the handbook, and we also do a number of learning sessions like this where we talk to the community about how they can start their own fridges or similar projects. And we're all about sharing our knowledge and also our challenges and difficulties that we're still working through today. And we truly believe that mutual aid builds stronger, empowered communities that will help to transform our world into a more equitable place. So, what is a community fridge? If you've never heard of a community fridge before, it is essentially an open space within a community. It's usually outdoors and easily accessible. It's either located on public city property or private property, and it's really just a free space for anybody to access food as well as personal care items like hygiene products without having to prove any need. And it's open 24/7 and it's not monitored all the time. So folks are free to come whenever they'd like to pick up items or to donate items. And from this fridge project that we've really learned is that a community fridge is more than just a space and a fridge. It really provides a number of benefits to the community. So it can be an opportunity to prevent food waste. Food waste is a huge problem. So I'll preface it with saying that our community fridge is not in the our goal is not to solve food waste or to solve food insecurity. The reality is that our fridge, just our one fridge, is not going to be able to do that. But it really can be an opportunity for community members to potentially share produce over the summer, for example, share maybe items that you brought at the grocery store that you realize maybe you're allergic to something in it. As long as the packaging is unopened and hasn't been tampered with, you're welcome to donate it to a community fridge. And it is an opportunity to address food insecurity in a really communal way. And you're focusing it in sort of a hyper local manner, in that you're just looking at maybe your community or the community surrounding versus thinking about it on such a large scale, which can be really overwhelming. And it's also just a really great volunteering community engagement project. We have a lot of volunteers that are involved in keeping the fridge running and a lot of folks that helped us get it set up. And through that, we've built a lot of relationships. So we like to just show this slide to kind of compare the difference between a community fridge and a food bank. So food banks are often located in potentially inaccessible areas. So when you think of where the food bank is in Calgary, for example, it's in a very industrial area because they need a large warehouse. They're serving a large amount of people. But unfortunately, it makes it harder for folks to actually get into access into the food bank. And then community fridges, in contrast, are typically located outdoors in highly accessible locations. So usually it's somewhere within the community that people are aware of. They know that area really well. And food bank, you often need to fill out paperwork to be accepted to access the food. You may need to provide, things like an income statement, tax return. For community fridge, as I mentioned, there's no questions asked. These spaces just open all of the time for folks to get things when they need. And at the food bank, because they're serving such a large proportion of the population, their items there may not be culturally relevant or may not be exactly what folks are looking for in a food hamper. Whereas with the community fridge, because it's embedded in a community, the people donating to it can really give food that potentially they know others in their community are looking for. So that may allow the fridge to have more culturally relevant food or foods that their community really enjoys and they know that they need. And it can also provide a larger variety of items. And lastly, the food bank may only allow people to take food a certain number of times, again, because they're just serving such a larger portion of the population. Whereas with a fridge, there's no limitations on how many times it can be accessed. So this is our fridge. So our fridge is outside of Rosscarroll Community Hall. You can see it there. We have two doors. One side is the fridge and the other side is the pantry. And on the doors, it's a little hard to read in this photo, but it just says take what you need and give what you can. And that's essentially the motto for the fridge. So the first question, really, when you're trying to come up with a community project or something that you want to do in your community to better your neighbors or whatever it may be, is figuring out what do you actually want to build. And for us, we knew going into the project that we wanted to build a community fridge. It was during the pandemic. I'd seen fridges pop up all across North America, and then even the Calgary Community Fridge here in Calgary. And I thought, oh man, that's such a great idea. Like, I would love to create a community fridge. And I was able to contact the Center Street Fridge right when they were kind of starting to get their fridge organized. So I saw a bit of the process on how that worked, and that really inspired me to try to start one in my neighborhood or in my community. But the first thing you really need to consider is what needs actually exist in your community. You know, it's great that we wanted to start a community fridge, but does the neighborhood actually need one? Will the community support a fridge? Do people in your neighborhood have the skills to help you actually start the fridge and maintain it? Do you personally have those skills and that community around you to help you? This is a project that I would highly recommend you have a team behind, which I'll discuss in a moment. And then the last question that we kind of asked or considered was, how will your community members actively contribute? So will it be cleaning and stocking the fridge? Will it be picking up donations? How can you actually get your community involved in this project so that it's not just doesn't turn into just a project that you started on your own and there's no community engagement, because the goal is really to get folks involved. And your project can be really anything. You know, it can address a basic need like food insecurity or access to hygiene projects, childcare, education, housing, or it can relate to skill sharing or social development. Maybe you want to do repair cafes, whatever it may be. It can be a new innovation or it can be an iteration of an existing project. So as I said, the community fridge project that we started is not, novel. They exist all over the world. And we even had another one in Calgary before ours was open as well. And there's currently now 3 fridges in Calgary. So you don't necessarily have to come up with a new innovation. It could be something that already exists and you want to tailor it to your community. And that is how you figure out how you're going to be best serving your community. And as I mentioned before, your project will likely not solve the root cause of the problem. When we look at a problem like food insecurity, the root cause is really poverty. And unfortunately, our community fridge is not going to be able to solve that. But it does benefit the community in other ways, and it can contribute to larger discussions for change, whether that's at a policy level or even just at a citywide level, and then going up from there. So creating your team, your team doesn't necessarily have to be 100 people. It can be a really small team. We're a team of 6 that started the fridge initially. And then now we have about 35 volunteers that help us actually manage the fridge day to day. And all of us are volunteers too, as well, that started the fridge. And so you really want to think about what skills can be helpful to you in creating this project when you're looking for team members. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, looking for people that have experience in community development. It can just be people that have a large skill set that complement each other. So for example, in our team, we have 2 nurses, a writer, an engineer, and a librarian. And we are honestly just a group of friends and siblings. 2 of my sisters are part of the group, and we all come with a different skill set. None of us necessarily came from a community development background, but we all have something to offer to the project. Creating a team name can be really fun as well, to come up with something if you'd like. We found it kind of a fun way to get things going. And the hatch really came up because we wanted to think of some way that you're hatching a project, but also a hatch can be related to a food hatch or somewhere where you store items. And then establishing a team agreement is also very important. What are your goals? What are your values? How are you going to communicate with each other? How are you going to navigate conflict? Those are all important things that you want to discuss with your team very early on, so that you have a good basis for starting the project and figuring out how you're going to manage challenges as they come up. And then scheduling and coordinating team meetings. You may have more at the beginning and then less as the project kind of gets going. We currently meet about once a month, but as I said, we're mostly friends and siblings in the group, so we see each other a lot outside of the project regardless. And then facilitating team decision making. So you want to try to be coming up with the process to get to consensus decision making and really deciding on how you're going to navigate challenges and large decisions, and also small decisions, making sure that everybody's voice is heard. So, does your area actually need your project? This is the next question that you may be asking when you're thinking about building a project in your neighborhood. For us, the way that we determined our community interest and need is that we created and distributed a community survey. Sorry, so we went actually door to door to three communities within. Three neighborhoods within sort of this area in the Southwest where a fridge is located to find out, do folks need a fridge? Are they interested in supporting one? And are there people in their neighborhood that struggle with food insecurity? And then connecting with partners. So for us, we connected with our community association in the neighborhood. It could be a community association, it could be other groups that do work in the community. Find those partners that you can connect with and learn more about what those needs are and what the goals are for folks that live in that area. And then create a project proposal. Outline your project. Why is it beneficial? Are there any potential challenges? How will you mitigate them? Are there any legality issues that you need to think of? All those items should be in your project proposal. And then continuing to just fostering those connections with other groups. So as I said, we fostered a really strong connection with the group that created the Center Street fridge because they had actually built their fridge already. So we looked to them for a lot of information when we started our fridge. And this is kind of an example of the survey questions that we asked folks. So we asked people if they thought they were folks that needed that were food insecure and if they would support a fridge. We really tried to put questions that were more related to experiences of food insecurity because oftentimes folks that are food insecure may not know that they're food insecure or may not classify it as such. So as you can see on the right there, a lot of the questions we asked were more about maybe things that people were experiencing or thoughts that folks had. And that's sort of how we gauged whether people in the neighborhood were food insecure. And we used a lot of the survey data in our proposal to show that there was need and interest in the fridge. So just quickly, some statistics of food insecurity in Alberta. Another thing that you can include in your project, if there's statistics on why this is needed from a larger policy or government level, that's really good too. So right now, 1 in 5 Albertans are experiencing food insecurity, which is the highest rate among all provinces in Canada. Families with a female major income earner were more likely to be food insecure, and also families with a racialized major income earner were also report higher levels of food insecurity. About 80% of adults who experience household food insecurity say it negatively impacts their physical and mental health, and 58% of adults say that food insecurity affects their ability to participate in community. And over 57,000 children access food banks in Alberta. And that second to last bullet point about participating in community, I think really shows why a project like this can be beneficial. It can get people involved in their community who may feel very socially isolated and stigmatized by experiencing food insecurity. So the next thing you need to do is build community connections. So your partners, who are they going to be? If you're putting up a fridge, it may be the host location, it may be volunteers in your neighborhood that help you start or run your project. It may be other community organizations and also donors and funders as well. Really look in your community to build those partnerships. You may not need to go very far to actually find folks that can help you out with these things. And again, because we had asked on our survey if folks would be interested in supporting the fridge and if they would be interested in volunteering, we had a section where people could put their email address if they wanted to sign up to volunteer or if they wanted more information once we got our project actually going. So that can be a good way to kind of hit both of these points. So next, you need to actually build the physical project. So for us, for our fridge, we needed somewhere that was street facing with signage that's visible from all angles, high traffic, but not too close to a highway or main road. We did not want our fridge to be, next to Deerfoot, for example. Somewhere that's accessible by car, transit, bike, foot. And that can be for whatever project you're creating. And as I mentioned before as well, public and well known to the members of your community. So our fridge is outside of our community association because that's a place that people know very well. Okay. Okay. And also somewhere that's regularly accessible. So for us, the fridge is open 24/7. So it needed to be somewhere that we could have open all the time. So ours is outside, for example. And then have all the necessary amenities and storage. So for us, we needed somewhere that had electricity for the fridge. For your project, and maybe a different amenity or thing that you need to run your project. So just make sure that you're thinking about that when you're thinking about finding where you're going to actually start this. And then creating a build mockup. So I won't go through all the nitty-gritty details of the fridge, but this is essentially some of the key elements that we need to have in order for our fridge to actually run safely and to keep the fridge running through the winter and through the summer, for example. So we had a pretty strong structure, electricity, we had vent holes, a heater, shelving at different heights, a lockbox for our cleaning supplies for volunteers, garbage recycling bins, all the necessary things that the project needs to actually run and also to be maintained over time. And this has, changed and morphed over time as well. We've changed our trash and compost bins like 3 times to figure out what's going to be the best bins for our volunteers and for people to access them. We've had to put up extra boarding around the fridge. We've had to adjust the shelf height and depth, for example. So things may change over time, but it's just important to try to think about what are those key elements from the beginning that you're going to need. And for us, for the permitting for the project, we actually did not have to get any for the fridge. We had many, many conversations with the planning department, with the city, and eventually came to agreement that because the community fridge space is quite small, it's less than 100 square feet, and nobody can actually stay inside of the fridge because the doors are quite close to the shelving for the pantry and for the fridge. They determined that we didn't need to get any permitting, which was a huge milestone for us because permitting is very, very costly. And we're just, as I said, a mutual aid group. We don't receive, thousands or millions of dollars in funding every year. So that was going to be a really big cost for us. But it is a case by case scenario, so make sure you're checking with the planning department to determine whether the permits are needed. And if you are planning a community fridge project and you need help navigating that process, we're happy to help you with that. You probably will need an electrical permit if you need to install the new outlet. And depending on what your project may be, whether it's not a fridge, you may not need permits or city approval at all, but it's always important to check. You don't want your project to finally be up and running for the city to tell you, hey, by the way, you need a permit for that, or you're actually not able to do that here. So just making sure that you're going through that process to make sure you don't need any of those approvals. And we found that the community association's neighborhood liaison and the social worker in the neighborhood were really helpful with communicating with the city and getting you connected with the departments that we needed to. So creating a budget, that's the next really important part of building a community project. So you need to ensure that your budget has all your materials. If you're renting space, for example, or if you're buying space or buying supplies, permits or other city requirements. Do you need to paint? Do you need to decorate? Do you need cleaning supplies? We needed cleaning supplies in a lockbox. Do you need separate garbage and recycling and compost containers, or are there some wherever you're planning to do your project? For us, we also needed a wall heater. We needed the physical fridge. And then we also offered our honorariums to our tradespeople. We had a carpenter, an electrician, and an artist that helped us. And we just wanted to be able to give them something to show our appreciation for them, essentially donating a lot of their time and labor to the project. So for us, the total startup for the fridge was about $5,000 to $6,000. And we did try to obtain pre-build and operation quotes wherever possible so we could create a more accurate budget. So you can see this is kind of an example of what our budget looked like. Our income, which was mostly grants and donations, and then all of our expenses. So getting your supplies. So for us, the build took about 3 to 4 weeks to do because our carpenter could only work on the weekends. And then we had to do our electrical inspection and then paint the fridge, install the actual fridge, and then add all of the additional supplies. One funny story I'll tell about this is that the fridge that we initially bought to put in, we finally got the structure all built. We were so excited to plug the fridge in, and the fridge was far too big. So it did not fit into the doorway of the fridge, and we were not able to actually get the fridge into the space. We spent about 3 hours trying to get the fridge into the structure because we were so determined, but it just would not fit. So make sure you're measuring was the biggest learning from that experience. And we were able to swap it out with another community group that was doing a project that had a fridge. So we just basically did a fridge swap and took their fridge because it was smaller. Yeah. And so the next big thing, now that your fridge is actually, or your project is actually up and running, now you need to maintain the project. So volunteers are really key. You need to create a strong volunteer network that's actually going to help you sustain this project, whatever it may be. So we use social media a lot. We also posted flyers in the neighborhood. We reached out to the community association to put ads in the newsletter to get volunteers signed up. We just have a Google form. That's how we use that's what we use for our sign up system. It's pretty simple. And then we really try to establish and support the volunteer team now that we're up and running. So we have a group chat with all of our volunteers where they provide updates on the fridge. We have volunteers that clean and stock the pantry. So for cleaning, it's about 2 to 3 shifts a day. So everyone commits to a weekly shift and they post in the group chat, hey, check the fridge, everything's good. They send a photo. If everything is not good and they need help or something's happened, they let us know. If we're running low on cleaning supplies, for example. And we just really show our appreciation in the chat, thanking our volunteers. They also share stories a lot about people who come to the fridge, whether it's people that's donating or taking items. And so we all really get to hear about the stories that people share at the fridge and also navigate challenges together as well. There's been lots of things that we've talked about in the fridge, how do we navigate, physical structure challenges and also social challenges, which I'll kind of discuss shortly here. And the other thing that you need to maintain the project is also fundraising and donor partnerships. So how are you actually going to sustain the project in terms of funding? Unfortunately, most projects require money. So will it be grants? Will it be individual donations? Will it be a combination of both? For us, it's a combination. So figuring out who your partners are in that sector as well. So funding the project, build cost, maintenance, stocking, and giving back. So the actual build of the fridge was our largest expense, about $5,000 to $6,000. So we applied for a couple community grants. We partnered with the community association because we're not a legal entity, but the community association is a nonprofit. So we were able to partner with them for a couple of grants. We also have donation boxes and food drives that we'll set up with businesses, for example, or other community groups like churches. We go to markets and events to advertise our fridge, to recruit volunteers and also collect donations. We have online fundraisers that we typically do. The holidays is usually a big time for folks donating. So figuring out a good plan for that before the holiday season is really helpful. And we also accept monetary donations through a variety of platforms. So we have a GoFundMe, we have Patreon, people can e-transfer us directly or donate cash as well. And we also sometimes do like door prizes or raffle prizes where we partner with community businesses and, have a raffle or a door prize for an item. And we also had to create a really good system to manage our funding because we're all volunteers. None of us get paid for this work, so that we don't have to worry about, but it's still really important to be transparent with the funding that's coming through. So we have one person in our group who manages our bank account. We get a report on where we're at with funding, what we spent on, what our upcoming expenses at the beginning of every meeting. And we also have spreadsheets where we list all of our expenses and all of our income, so everybody is aware of the money that's coming in and out of the account. And we found that really leveraging our personal networks has been really helpful. You'll be surprised at how many people in your circles actually are willing to give and really want to support you. Your friends and family are likely going to be the ones that want your projects to succeed. So they will probably be the ones that provide you with funding or support in other ways. So really thinking about how can you leverage your personal network regardless of how big it is. And again, your community where your project's going to be built, those are the people that want to see the project succeed and continue on. So how can you connect with them, keep them engaged, keep them informed, and have them fund your project? So challenges, there's lots of challenges with our community fridge, as with any project. So our main challenges are with cleanliness and maintenance and getting donations. So how do we keep the space clean? As I mentioned, we have about 2 to 3 volunteer shifts a day where folks will come and clean the fridge, make sure everything's all good. But because the project is open 24/7, things can happen between the time frame of volunteers checking the fridge. And unfortunately, that happens all the time. And there's not a lot we can do about it unless we have it monitored 24/7, which is a big part of the community fridge, is that it's not monitored and that it is open all the time. And so we have to just ensure that our volunteers are, doing really good checks when they go. If they notice that there's issues, having a big volunteer team is helpful because someone can say, oh, hey, yeah, I can stop by the fridge after work. We have a couple volunteers that can actually see the fridge from their house. So they'll be like, oh, I can see the fridge right now. Everything looks fine, so that can be really helpful as well. We have had some damage here and there to the fridge space that we've had to repair. We have my dad and my brother-in-law are often the ones that are helping me repair damage to the fridge because they're much handier than I am. But it's good to also have volunteers that are available and able to help with that too. And then we also need to recruit a lot of volunteers. So we have about 35 volunteers that help us right now. And the bigger the volunteer pool, the better the project is likely going to be because you have a lot of folks with varying schedules and talents that can assist you with any of these challenges that you may face. And we've also had a little bit of vandalism. Our fridge is close to a couple middle schools. So unfortunately, there's some kids that come over after school or on break and, think it's fun to throw food or make a mess around the fridge. And for that, we've really been trying to connect with the schools to go in to have a presentation or to have them do a food drive so that they really learn and understand that this project is part of their community and that they have a part in maintaining it as well. Whether you're a volunteer or not, everybody in the neighborhood does play a part in continuing the success of the project. And then garnering donations, so connecting with food donors. We have a couple partnerships with Leftovers Foundations and Second Harvest. Also, again, engaging your community, using community newsletters, areas where your community is going to access information readily. That's a great place for you to post ads or information about your project. And then collaborating with partners like the Community Association, for example, to host food drives when they're doing community events. Neighbor Day is coming up, so they likely will do a food drive for the fridge during that time. And we also have some issues with like donation hoarding, or where people will say, oh, I saw a car come and they cleared the entire fridge out, so they must just be selfish, just taking all the donations for themselves. And we really encourage folks to consider and not judge others. Consider the situations of others. So maybe they're getting food for seniors in the neighborhood. Maybe they have a big family. Maybe they're distributing it to others. You don't know what that person's story is or the reason why they need to access the fridge. We also have people who say, oh, that person drives a BMW. They don't need to access the fridge. And food insecurity can be a very stigmatizing experience. There's likely people in your neighborhood right now that are food insecure, but will not show it. Housing and a car are usually the things that people will spend their money on. And then food may be a second or third or fourth thing that they'll spend the rest of their income on. So it's really important to try to consider this as not not a judgmental space. And we try to encourage folks to also have conversations with the people that are coming to the fridge if they're open to having those conversations. We've had lots of people come and say, oh yeah, there's 3 seniors that live on my block that are not able to come all the way to the fridge. There's folks that travel from all the way up from Strathcona and come down the hill to access our fridge. So there can be a lot of reasons why folks are taking more donations than others. So frequently asked questions. So who can take from the fridge? Everybody, anybody. What foods can I donate? We essentially accept everything at the fridge except for raw food. So no raw meat or raw seafood and nothing opened or damaged. Is it safe to take from a community fridge? Yes, it is safe. There's a Good Samaritan law in Canada which protects people from being sued for taking food if it's been given, or sorry, from giving food if it's been given with good intentions. So nobody can come back and say, oh, I got sick from something at the fridge, because we assume that the people donating are doing it out of the goodness of their heart, essentially. And as I said, will a fridge be held liable if somebody gets sick? No, nobody will be held liable due to the Good Samaritan Act that we have in Canada. Do you have surveillance cameras? So we don't have cameras at the fridge itself. The community association, the hall, has cameras, and you can see the fridge in the cameras. We do tell people that there are cameras there. They're not monitored 24/7. There's not somebody sitting there watching the cameras all the time. But unfortunately, we have to sort of balance the needs of the community association and with our fridge. So that was sort of a compromise that we made with them. And do you limit how much food people can take? No, people can take as much or as little as they'd like and come back as frequently as they'd like. So just some statistics at the fridge. So it takes about less than 2 hours for the fridge to go from full to empty every day. As I said, we have about 30 volunteers that help to stock, clean, and regularly check on the fridge. Currently, at the time of this presentation, we've made over 100 trips to the grocery store to restock the fridge. We've raised about $21,000 through food drives, donations, and grants since we opened the fridge in 2021. All the funds that we've received have been used to restock the fridge when the stock is really low. Host learning sessions like this. We host them throughout Calgary in different spaces. We also do some volunteer appreciation events, and then we also published our handbook. And we have 7 community partnerships. So with the Crosscare Community Association, where our fridges, leftovers, Second Harvest for food donations. We also partner with the Women's Center, Food Justice Now, which is a student food insecurity group at U Calgary, the Beltline Community Fridge, and also the Common Cupboard Bonus. We share donations a lot between the three fridges in Calgary. We get a lot of donations through Second Harvest, for example, so we're often driving them to different fridges around. So we really try to support each other. There's no fridge competition or anything like that in the city. We're all about supporting more fridges in the city. And how can you actually get involved? So you can volunteer with us to check and clean the fridge. You can volunteer to pick up donations from our various partners. You can donate food or monetary donations. Pick up a couple extra items when you grocery shop. It doesn't need to be a cartload of things for the fridge. It may just be 1 or 2 items, and that is greatly appreciated. Anything that you're able to give. Spread the word, talk about what you learned today in this session, the importance of community fridges, how they work, and how they can help and build community in our neighborhoods, and how other folks can get involved. Advocate for policy and legislation changes. So universal basic income, for example, ensuring that grocery stores are reducing their food waste and pricing, and housing for all. All of those connect back into food insecurity. Stay informed and connected to your community, and also start your own community fridge or pantry. Go to the next one. So yeah, wrapping up for now. We have 2 more minutes. So we just really like to wrap it up by saying that we try to really continue to reinforce the ideals of a mutual aid project. Take what you need, give what you can. No judgment on anyone who accesses the fridge, no continuous monitoring or surveillancing of the fridge, and understanding that there's going to be a lot of challenges that come up, and it does no use to get angry or upset about the challenges. We just have to work together to go through how we're going to mitigate them, and work with our volunteers and our community partners to continue to keep the project up and running and successful for hopefully many years to come. We have our handbook available in the additional resources. We also, as I said, host other community learning sessions, and you can also connect with us through social media or send us an email. And if you have any questions, please ask. And these are sort of some more additional resources. They're included in the I think what was given to all the participants as well. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation, right on the dot of 10. I don't know if we'll just be, I think we all have to go back to the main room. I'm not exactly sure.
We do.
Okay.
But if anybody has any questions, yeah, feel free to to put them in the chat or just ask directly.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, I have a question. Well, first, I love the project.
Thank
It's
you.
great also to build relationships. And I have a question. So at the beginning, you mentioned about also talk how we can resolve any, different opinions or argument at the beginning. Like how did you go over that with the group of people that you have?
Yeah, so I think that team agreement is really important. So in the additional resources, there's a book there called Building. It's actually, I think it's Mutual Aid. It's by, I think it's just called Mutual Aid. It is in there by, oh my gosh, completely forgetting the author's name now. But anyways, that book really goes through.
Have been in a session, get up,